What's good, y'all? Welcome to Conversation Piece. I am Patrick Armstrong, and this is a show where we talk about the missing pieces of the conversations we're already having. We are here for episode 99. I appreciate you all being here in 2024, the year of the nap, no matter how you got here, when you got here, where you're coming in from, whether it's YouTube or whatever podcast platform you might be accustomed to. I appreciate it. We are very excited because as of yesterday, we have just recorded our 100th episode. I've clearly recovered because I celebrated so hard for doing 100 episodes of the show, and I'm very excited about what's coming next. We're going to have some really good announcements coming up. But until then, and to maybe talk a little bit about this event that I just mentioned, my guest today is an expert in strategic communications and is probably most known for her work running Silent Book Club Indy, but who might most be well known, who might soon be most known for her new business, Keeping Up Strategic Communications, focused on helping entrepreneurs amplify their stories. While I cannot attest to her work with Silent Book Club because I have not been there yet, I can personally attest to her work with strategic communications because I am currently a client and I've actually tricked her into having a meeting under the guise of having a podcast recording so as to not have to pay her for said meeting. So without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to welcome my strategic communications events coordinating super friend, Kelsey Jones, to the show. Kelsey, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that intro and somehow tricking me into meeting with you and not paying me for it. So
you're very welcome, and I am also very welcome. You're welcome, future Patrick, for having this meeting out, and you're welcome, all the listeners that are still here and watching, because you're gonna get a little inside behind the scenes of the show, maybe. Who knows? Kelsey, I gave you a little bit of an intro. I gave you a little bit of some information about what you do, but not a lot. So for folks who might be listening or watching who don't know who you are, do you mind sharing just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am a corporate communicator by day, but as you mentioned, I run Silent Book Club Indy, as well as have my own freelance consulting business, Keeping Up, where I do strategic communications, and that encompasses social media management, event ideation, strategy, and just really helping entrepreneurs amplify their brand. I have been in Indianapolis for 12 years now. I live downtown with my husband, Luke, and two cats, Winston and Wally, and love it. And I'm just a big promoter of the city.
Big promoter of the city. I feel like I first heard of Silent Book Club, not of yourself. But Silent Book Club was just something that continued to be promoted to me directly, whether it be on Instagram or whether it be from just word of mouth around the city. And just happened to get connected with you via mutual friend, Casey Harrison.
Yes.
So shout out to Casey for connecting us, because as we will talk about later, you are incredible at what you do. You've been an incredible partner in what we've been trying to do with the show and the things that we've been planning for the show. And I appreciate all the work that you've put in so far and can't wait to continue doing that work with you. Where did you come from before you got to Indy?
Wow. So I was born and raised in a little town called Oxford outside of West Lafayette. I lived there most of my life. I then went to university at Ball State. Chirp, chirp, if we have any Ball State listeners. And I came to Indianapolis after, I guess I first lived with my parents for a year, as one does, save some money, and then came to Indianapolis. My first career was actually in hospitality and food management. And I worked at a brewery, I worked at a frozen yogurt joint, was actually district manager for a frozen yogurt chain, and realized that I really enjoyed doing the PR and marketing for the frozen yogurt company.
Okay.
So I went back to get my master's at Ball State in PR, and then started working in the corporate world doing comms and PR. And over the course of the last couple of years, have transitioned to freelance communications and PR. And I've been in Indy since I came back from grad school in 2016. So I've been in Indy off and on for 12 years. But yeah, I have lived in a few other places since then.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that. Anything specific that you worked on at the frozen yogurt place that was the switch flipper for you? That was like, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do now. So I'm going to go back to Ball State.
So in particular, that's where I really found my love for Instagram. And especially frozen yogurt. It's such a fun item and so photogenic.
Sure.
Like I would get to build these crazy yogurt cups and then take pictures of them. And then, yes, I got to consume them afterwards as well. So that was a lot of fun. But I did a lot of community engagement in that position as district manager for a frozen yogurt chain. So I would partner with schools and take yogurt to various events at schools. And I just really enjoyed the building relationships in the community in addition to running social media, et cetera. So that's another reason why I chose to go back for public relations, because it's a lot about building relationships and establishing partners to get to your end goal, through strategic communication. So,
did you always know you wanted to move into a corporate role as like the day job when you got to Indianapolis?
Absolutely not. Corporate was actually last on my list, and specifically healthcare corporate, which is what I ended up working in. But I interviewed with Roche, where I worked for several years, but I just fell in love with the people at the company and the offices and the campus and the job itself. So that's why I decided to say yes. But no, originally in grad school, I was working for a nonprofit called Indiana Landmarks. So I interned with them during grad school and thought I would go the nonprofit route or maybe a smaller company. But no, ended up in a giant corporation instead.
Well, when does Silent Book Club then come about?
Yes. So I started Silent Book Club Indy 2 years ago, so April of 2022. I was looking for a way to meet people after the pandemic, start getting back out, going to events. I was also looking for more of a creative outlet than what my day job was giving me. And again, going back to my love of Instagram, I was like, hey, well, I can use Instagram to promote this book club, so that's a win. And then lastly, I hate being told what to read. I really do. So I was looking for a book club where I could still have that environment and meet people and converse about books and authors, but not be told what book to read.
Yeah.
So I was like, Silent Book Club. Perfect. So Silent Book Club, in case you didn't know, is actually now an international organization. It was started by two women in San Francisco about a decade ago. They would get together at the local pub, read books, have a beer, and then started slowly inviting friends to come with them, and then decided to formalize it and have chapters across the U.S. And now there's more than 1,000 chapters around the world.
Damn.
So lots of Silent Book Club chapters. But I started it, yes, for a creative outlet, for a way to meet people, but also so you can choose what book you want to read at book club. It is on my bucket list to go to another city or country and go to their Silent Book Club meetup.
Ninja, like undercover boss it a little bit? Or just attend is just like...
Just attend, yeah.
You talked about how starting this was something that would allow you to tap into a creativity you weren't tapping into during your day job. What type or style of creativity were you tapping into that is different that you weren't able to get to during the day?
So as you can imagine, being in healthcare communications, it's heavily regulated and you have to be somewhat serious, and there's not a lot of room for fun and for puns and just a lot of creativity in general. So I really wanted to flex that muscle, still use my communication skill sets, but in a more engaging and fun way.
Sure.
And with book club, I've definitely been able to do that.
What's the worst corporate pun that you ever came across?
Oh, goodness. That's a tough. I always try to plug in a pun, but I usually get told no from the approver. So whether that be my manager or the stakeholder I'm supporting. So usually you just don't use puns.
Okay. Any pun that slipped through that you've seen that you're like, how did that, who approved this? And then you were very upset after you saw it.
So there is a pun that I did get away with. I primarily did internal communication. So I supported like the cafeterias on the campus where I worked. And I remember, this is going to sound ridiculous, but the cafeterias were switching from plastic straws to paper straws. Yes, we had to communicate about that. there were some strong opinions
Oh, for sure.
about straws. So we communicated that, we're being more eco-friendly. This is better for the environment. We're reducing our carbon footprint. But I threw in some puns about like sucking and,
Okay.
green puns, anything and everything. And I actually got away with it. So
Did it work, do you think?
I think it was more engaging. It got a lot of reads on our intranet. It got people talking, which is always a good thing, regardless of whether they were pro paper or not. It got people talking.
I say you're doing your job then. As PR and marketing, you're getting the conversation going, and I think that you accomplished what you needed to accomplish. I said earlier that Silent Book Club was what I first heard about when I even came into your orbit, and I feel like in the 2 years that you've been doing, it's grown pretty large. You've built a pretty big community, and it has become a pretty sought after thing to attend. What has been the most enjoyable aspect of Silent Book Club for you after these 2 years?
Hands down, just seeing the community that Silent Book Club has created. I was actually looking at numbers prior to this podcast, and our first year, we did about 120 readers throughout the year at our monthly meetups. And this year alone, and we're only in August, we have had nearly 1,000 readers at our meetups, and we have one a month. So we've been accommodating more readers. We've been creating a sense of community. I think people find it inclusive and inviting, and we don't judge what you're reading. We're pro-banned books. So I think it's just been a great space for people to gather and meet new people. A lot of people that come, I'm always surprised every meetup how many individuals say they've never been to Silent Book Club. Because I'm like, okay, we've been here for about 2.5 years now, and we constantly have dozens of people, if not more than that, that are new every single month. And I especially appreciate when people say, thank you for creating this space. Thank you for creating an environment for an introvert to come and be among other people and maybe not socialize, but be among other people. Or maybe they do start socializing and they meet a friend, and then the next meetup, they come with that friend intentionally together. So that's hands down my favorite part, is the sense of community and the space that's created.
Well, I know one of the things that people have always said whenever I'm speaking with them about it has been like, oh, I got off the wait list, essentially, because there seems to be like always a sellout of tickets, and it's just like if you get in, you get in, and it's something to be celebrated. And I love the idea of community, and like you said, one of the reasons you started was not just to be able to read what you want, but to be able to go meet new people. And the fact that now other people are able to attend and walk away with that experience, I think is a beautiful thing. What's one of the biggest misconceptions about Silent Book Club?
I would say that it's for females.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, a lot of people are, oh, well, that's for women, or that's girly, or that's female oriented. So come, check it out.
So the patriarchy, essentially.
Yes.
That's the biggest misconception on anything, really. But one of the things I think, too, that's really incredible over 2.5 years is seeing this expansion and this growth. And I think with Silent Book Club, feels like a lot of it probably falls on your shoulders, but I don't think it's something that you do on your own. So I was wondering who helps you run events that host thousands of people.
Correct. Yes. My husband, Luke, earlier this year or end of last year, pushed getting volunteers for Silent Book Club because he was my volunteer. So I did a call out the end of last year for what are now called book ambassadors. So we have 12 volunteers that help me create social media content. They'll take pictures at events. They'll do bios of readers at the events for posting on social media. They also help with check-in, which when you have 200 people at a meetup, that is crucial. And they also just help create that warm and inclusive environment and make people feel welcome, go around and pass out bookmarks and ask people what they're reading. And if it's someone's first time and maybe they didn't come with anybody, help connecting them with someone else that's there so they have a friend. But Yeah.
I love it.
Shout out to my book ambassadors. They're awesome.
Shout out to the book ambassadors. And that's a perfect segue into a recurring segment that we have on the show called Give Them Their Flowers, where our guests share one person or a few people or whoever they want to highlight and give their flowers to at the moment. So, Kelsey, is there anybody that you'd like to specifically highlight and shout out and give their flowers to today?
Yes. So my grandma recently passed away. So I'm going to give her some flowers in her memory wherever she may be, whether she has her own planet now or is in the heavens, wherever. Here's some flowers, Grandma.
Shout out to Kelsey's grandma. We're going to get flowers somehow to you to take to her wherever you need to take them to. And shout out to Frida's Flowers for sponsoring this segment. And thank you for that. That was beautiful. I want to move to keeping up, because I think this is, while you've been helping me, I think this is fairly a new venture, because I do believe while you have an Instagram account, your first post was as of this recording. Is
That's
that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How does it feel to make that first post and to make this announcement of like, hey, I'm doing this now on my own? Like officially, publicly, with like a brand and a name and a face to it.
It is scary and exciting all at the same time. I launched Keeping Up earlier this year. Well, I really started doing freelance last year, a little over a year ago. Shout out to Brittany Baxter with Eat Surreal, who does Amazeball. She was my first client last year before I even had a brand name or contract or any of those formal business things. So I formally launched Keeping Up earlier this year and got the LLC, the bank account, all of the things you do when you have a small, the really fun stuff, reading legal paperwork. Yes, all of that. And then recently got Instagram, and as you saw, just posted today.
Why is now the time to go live, to go public and be like, let's take on all comers when it comes to like whatever it is that you want to do?
Mm-hmm. So I'm thankful that I've been able to leverage my network in Indianapolis, and it got to the point where I've had so many people reach out to me for communication support, whether it's social media or media relations or like you, event support. And it was just getting to the point where I'm like, I need to formalize this a bit more and have that, formal LLC Keeping Up, have that bank account, have contracts in place. So it just got to the point where I'm like, I either got to go all in or I need to tell people, no, I'm not going to go that route and not do it.
Yeah.
So I decided to take the leap.
Yeah. You're helping me with events specifically, but I think you dabble or work in a number of different pillars. What all types of communication support do you provide?
Yeah. So really with every client, I start with a strategy session. So that's how I understand what your brand and your goals and priorities are, as well as I hope it helps you better understand your own brand too. We do a SWOT analysis. So what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Who do you think your competitors are in the local community? Where are your biggest opportunities for growth, and where you think that you can leverage my skill sets the best? What gaps do you have? So that I do with every single client, but I also offer media relations. So if you're just wanting to get your brand out in local publications or with local influencers, I do that type of work. I do a lot of social media management, so drafting content, but could also be managing your platforms. And then event ideation, so coming up with event concepts for your brand to get the name out, and also helping with event logistics if needed. And then really just all of the implementation and execution, because, if you have a strategy but you don't implement it, what's the point? So making sure staying on task and measuring success as well.
I feel like that was pointed at me.
Not at all.
I'm just kidding. So you do everything basically. Like you offer a wide-ranging, like suite of what you can do.
Holistic strategic communications.
From beginning to end.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you're looking for specifically from like a client or an industry-wise? Like, where do you want to work? Like, what kind of stories do you want to tell?
So I think every entrepreneur and every brand has a story. Sometimes they don't know it. So that's why I'm here to help you tell your story, help extract it and tell your story. I specifically have an interest in community-centric individuals, change makers like yourself, small businesses. I also, because I have a background in the hospitality industry and I'm actually working on a graduate certificate in food communications, I have an interest in food and beverage and hospitality. So those are kind of the spaces I think I'm somewhat of a subject matter expert and work in and want to do more of.
I like it. And you heard that here, audience, change maker. Go ahead and just cut that out. Put that on the website. I appreciate that. I think one of the through lines of everything that we've done in 2024 in Indianapolis has been about community and been how we find it in different areas and in different ways and how we go about engaging and creating it. And I like how small business owners and entrepreneurs approach it from a different mindset of how do I leverage the skills and gifts that I have to positively impact the people that I'm going to be working with. You've been doing that for the last 2.5 years with Silent Book Club. What do you take from that experience into keeping up in the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, I think just what you said, like hone in on what your skills are personally and then apply them. Figure out a way to use your passions, your skill sets, and get paid to do it. That's my best advice. And that's kind of how keeping up came about. I was like, I know I'm good at this, and I know the type of people I want to help in the community, and apply it to a business.
What's the hardest part for you so far about launching your entrepreneurial journey that's not just freelancing, but the brand and everything that goes with it?
Ooh, I would definitely say to start was doing the tax forms and the legal paper. I'm not gonna lie, there were some tears. It was stressful.
Yeah.
It's a bit overwhelming. That was the most challenging thing. Now I think it's not having imposter syndrome and just being confident with my skill sets and communicating that to people.
Yeah.
And, not being surprised when I get past clients my way and like, yeah, I'm good at what I do. I can do this and I can have my own business.
Yeah. How does that imposter syndrome show up in this work? Because I do feel like we've had Casey on the show, and I do feel like there are a lot of different comms, I don't want to say startups, but just like people popping up around the city.
Small agencies, consultants.
Agencies. Yeah. How does that show up for you, and how do you navigate those feelings?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I mean, it can show up in a lot of ways. Like I just said, it could show up, when I get past a client and I'm like, ooh, like that seems like a difficult task, or, ooh, okay, that'd be super challenging.
Sure.
But it's just knowing that, taking a step back, knowing that I have the skills to do it and I am a confident, well-educated woman, and just taking the leap and saying yes.
Yeah, I like that. Sometimes you got to take the leap.
Yes.
Where does that like confidence come from? Does that come from like back home in Oxford, like in the family that you grew up in, or like where does that build up, or like how is that built up, and where's that foundation start?
I have not always been overly confident. I would say that is something I've honed in on in my late 20s and into my 30s. I do come from a family of very confident, hardworking women, though. I will say that. And I think my mother always empowered my sister and I to say yes and to do the work, but also know that you can do more and don't be afraid to take the reach, whether it's getting an advanced degree or whether it is starting your own business or trying, a new skill set or a new career that you might not be affluent in yet.
Yeah.
So just always being curious and then understanding that you do have the skills to do that. And like I said, taking the leap.
Yeah. I appreciate that because I feel like I've seen that curiosity show up in working with you. And I think it's interesting because I feel like your energy comes off as like confident and assured, and I appreciate it because it's like that's just good energy. You know what I mean? But and it wouldn't dawn on me that like you weren't always operating and navigating the world that way. So I appreciate you sharing that. When it comes to stepping into this world of telling a story on your own, and then balancing that with having to also continue to tell this story from the corporate daytime perspective, how do you find that balance? How does that balance work out for you and show up in your life right now?
So there isn't a balance. A lot of days it's complete chaos.
Okay.
It's going from corporate to taking a break for a few hours to do keeping up or Silent Book Club and then going back to the corporate world for a few hours. So it honestly is not a good balance.
So how do you find? So how are you trying to find it in the chaos of work? Which is interesting because you're managing other people's marketing and strategic communications, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not taking care of them, but it's just like you have a lot going on. So how are you trying to find pockets of self-care? I guess I should say. Balance, I think, is probably some form of self-care, I think. But how are you trying to find it?
And I don't want to say things are like out of balance. I think work-life balance, I think it ebbs and flows, right? Like at times you're going to have more work than you are your personal time for yoga, for going on that run or whatnot. It kind of ebbs and flows where other times work might be slower, so you have more time to spend on yourself. But I've been trying to get better at time blocking and also doing that yoga class that, I've been putting off for the last 3 weeks. Well, maybe I should actually go this week. Or, every Wednesday morning I go for a jog. That's my morning. I get out around the neighborhood, go for my jog. Sometimes I stop and get a coffee. Whereas other days I usually try to push my workout back to the evening. But it's nice, especially in that summertime, just like get out, get some fresh air.
Yeah.
And take that time. So time blocking has become very important.
Sometimes you got to go out and touch grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Who did we talk to about that? Shay? Was that Shay? Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like take your shoes off.
Yeah.
Touch the grass. Yeah.
I think that's funny. And I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you sharing that little bit of your story because I think that those like human parts of ourselves, like that we kind of like the people don't see on social media. They don't generally hear unless you share it in like an interview like this. Those are what really make up what ends up the finalized product, what ends up on the feed. What do you think as you start to tell more and more stories of small business owners and entrepreneurs in the city? What do you think the advantages are for an Indianapolis-based business right now to tell stories in this city and in this market?
There's a lot of opportunities. I think no matter what industry you're in, whether it's food and beverage, whether you're a nonprofit, et cetera, Indianapolis is, I don't want to say it was down, but it's definitely on an upswing. Like there's a lot happening in Indianapolis, and not just in sports, like a lot of people go to first and foremost. But I think there's a lot of events to get out and tell your story with, whether it's fairs or networking events, et cetera. There's always something going on.
Yeah.
And I know some new people that come to the city or some that have lived here for a long time, unfortunately, are like, there's just not enough to do. And I'm like, I feel like we live in different cities because I usually have the problem. I have multiple events in any one day and I have to decide which one I'm going to go to.
Sure.
So there's a lot of opportunities to tell your story through those types of events, whether depending on what your service or your product is, whether it's having a booth at an event or just networking or being on a panel discussion or speaking, being on a podcast.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities. And then, of course, there's all of the social media platforms where you can connect with others in your industry and other like-minded folks to tell your story as well.
I think it's so interesting you bring up people saying like there's not a lot to do here. I used to be one of those people for sure, but I also feel like I've been seeing that comment a lot recently, and I feel similarly to you that I feel like I live in a different part of Indy where there's a lot of things going on. Do you think that's as a communications expert yourself, is that a communications problem? that people are just not aware of the events because we're not doing a good enough job communicating them? Or what do you think the disconnect there is from that layperson who doesn't know, that claims to not know, versus all of the things that are happening that we are aware of, seemingly?
So I think it's being communicated because you and I know about it, right?
Sure.
So I think a lot of it, honestly, is on the onus of the person, though. Like, you have to make an effort, right? So follow, 317, follow Indy Today, etc. Be on Instagram, follow the accounts, and that's how you're going to get your information. Events are being communicated. I think there's a lot of awesome platforms in Indianapolis, like Visit Indy. They have a blog and an events calendar. There's so many of those types of platforms in Indy. Just follow one of them, and I feel like you'll be in the know, whether it's signing up for their newsletter, following them on Instagram, just looking at their calendar. That's a great way to get started. And then from there, I feel like you'll continue to learn more about other events and happenings.
Is there any, you mentioned Visit Indy specifically, any other outlets or sources for information or events like this that you recommend people be tapped into to make sure they're staying up on stuff like this?
100% Indy Hub. They helped me get the word out about Silent Book Club when I started a couple years ago. They have an awesome newsletter called 5 Square Feet. They always have the up and coming events. They have highlights of people doing awesome things in the city. It's just a great nonprofit to be a part of, specifically geared towards 20 and 30 somethings, right? So they're helping talent stay here in Indianapolis, but also attract new talent. So I would encourage everyone to definitely get plugged in with Indy Hub.
And speaking of Indy Hub and bringing it back to the idea of business, who is calling me from Flagstaff, Arizona? Not even long enough to me to check the thing to see who it was. Hung up. Anyways, bringing it back to business, like Indy Hub, I feel like has a lot of programs and stuff to support that small business owner. You talked about some of the struggles of being that new entrepreneur, particularly the tear shed over tax forms. Who is is there anybody helping or supporting you, or what are you tapping into right now as a small business owner for those supports and resources as you go through this journey?
Besides my husband, Luke.
Besides
He has been a big help.
Yeah.
I would also, another plug here, the Maven Space. I found the Maven Space to be a great community, specifically for entrepreneurs and people who are doing freelance work. It's a co-working space in downtown Indy, specifically geared towards women. But a lot of individuals there have gone through the same thing. They've started their own businesses. They can help you with those tax forms. They can help you with LLC questions, etc. So that, for me, has been an invaluable resource.
Yeah, that is, I feel like the small business, like the business aspect of it, is what we forget about a lot of times, and we need the most support in. But I feel like the accessibility of it it's, I don't know, few and far between sometimes. How did you get tapped into some of these resources? And how does somebody go about best way to get tapped into it? Because I feel like one of the conversations that we had recently was around this idea of accessibility for an entrepreneur or small business owner. And I think part of the problem, it did feel like, was a communications issue of this is what is here for you as you go on this journey. So how do folks make sure that they get tapped into the right things?
So I would go back to saying, use your network. Indianapolis it's great because I feel like, at least myself, and maybe you felt this way, I'm 2 degrees from the information I need. So if one of my first connections doesn't have the information, they probably know someone who does, which is one of the reasons I absolutely love Indianapolis. So use your network, ask around about where you need help, what resources you need, and hopefully they can connect you with someone who has the information, the knowledge for you. But I would also say, honestly, Google Indianapolis small business resources. The Chamber is a great place to start. Again, those co-working spaces like the Maven space or Co-Hatch or wherever you go, there's probably someone there that has either been through starting a business or whatever you're interested in knowing more about, or again, knows someone who can help you.
It all comes back to community.
Yes.
Tap into that network. Always important. And the one thing that's probably going to be there when other things fall apart around you. Which brings me to now. That was how we got connected, was through the networking of Casey, through the show, through wanting to expand and build upon what's happening here in the city. And I love that your work has really been focused on growing businesses that are here, operating here. I was wondering if you would mind talking a little bit about the working together with Conversation Piece, working with me, and what we might have coming up going forward. We didn't talk about that we were going to talk about this, but I just wanted to know if you had anything that you wanted to share about what we've been cooking up, and I don't know, your perspective on things.
Well, like I mentioned earlier with every client, we started with a strategy session, right?
That's
so
true.
we could understand your brand and better communicate that specifically through events. And it's been awesome to partner with you on your 100th episode coming out in a few weeks. And you have that event on Monday. Are you going to do a full shout out, or do you want me to do that for you right now?
I mean, technically the event happened yesterday. So that's the thing with recording in the future is, or in the past.
But you have the event on Monday, the 19th.
No, because this episode will come out on the 20th.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Right?
Cut that.
Is that right? Okay.
Okay.
That's a good blooper reel. Okay, yeah. Right? The 100th episode will be next week.
Okay.
27th. Recorded. Recorded on the 19th. Out on the 27th.
So many dates to remember. Yep.
It's a lot of dates. This is why we're going on a break. So we can figure it out. I don't know. I was just going to ask about stuff that we have going on. We've been working on a couple different things. One of the things I want to talk about that is going to be, that we just announced at the event, is some more community-specific events. Originally, we talked about how do we engage with folks and have conversations about what's happening in different parts of the city, and also incorporate, because I'm a big food person, incorporating food into that. And you had a really great idea called Pizza with Patrick. So we're going to be doing similar styled events to that, potentially branded in a different way. But we have stuff like that coming out. We have some other culinary focused events, I think, that we've been talking about as well, that we have coming. And you weren't part of this, but if you have been tapped into the show, you know we were just with the City League this past week doing event sports coverage, which was really fun. John was there for that. Shout out to Ziad as well. So we got some things cooking. And I think one of the reasons I just wanted to have that conversation with you on air is that, you've talked about not only how you got into communications, but like what you've been doing and why you want to do it. And I just feel like it was a good foundation for what we're growing on the show that we've been able to do together. And you've been the silent hidden partner team member of the crew of people who have slowly grown over the last 6 months to help build the show into what it is. So that was the only reason I was bringing this up, and it devolved into madness, and we brought it back. So it's all good. Before we depart, I want to ask if there's anything you'd like to share with anybody who is looking to break into communications work in the city. What is something that you would say they need to make sure that they're focused on and working towards if they're going to get into that space here?
I would say if you're interested in the industry, definitely shadow someone, or depending on where you are in your career, do an internship to make sure it's something you're interested in and passionate about. There's so many amazing, like you were saying earlier, small communications and marketing agencies in the city, and individuals that are just, hustling themselves. So if you follow some of them on Instagram, reach out to them. Be like, hey, I'm interested in doing what you're doing. I'd love to follow you for a day. And I guarantee you that a lot of them are going to say yes, because that's the type of community we have in Indianapolis. And I've been amazed, specifically in the communications and PR industry here, how helpful the women are and the men in this industry. They love connecting each other. Like, there's constantly women who email me and are like, hey, I'm at bandwidth right now, but I have this person that needs X, Y, and Z. Are you interested in taking them as a client or helping them with this project? Constantly emails about that. And I hope to do the same for others as well. So definitely job shadow, do an internship, depending where you are in your career. Go to networking events. You know, we have a public relations society here in Indianapolis. Go to their events, join their chapter. There's also the American Marketing Association that has an Indianapolis chapter. So just get out, meet people, learn, take webinars. I mean, since the pandemic, there's so many online opportunities too to expand your education skill sets.
Well, I appreciate everything that you've dropped in this episode and everything you just shared right there, because I feel like it is a list of things that you can tick off in order to best set yourself up for success, especially if you're starting a small business here in Indianapolis and you're looking to connect. And the networking, again, that's how we got connected. It was because somebody was at capacity and emailed Kelsey and said, I have this person, and here we are. If people want to find Silent Book Club, support Silent Book Club, follow along, get tickets, how do they do that? And if they want to do it with Keeping Up, how do they do that as well?
Yes. So Silent Book Club, the best way to keep up on that is
full circle. We got to the pun.
Is SBC Indy on Instagram, or you can follow Silent Book Club Indy on Eventbrite. And I highly recommend setting up notifications on Eventbrite so you know when tickets are going to be released. And also, if people cancel their tickets to an event that was originally sold out, you can then be first dibs on grabbing the canceled tickets. So that's the best way for Silent Book Club. And then with Keeping Up, and we didn't even talk to, it is kind of, you know, a reference to my last name, Jones. I don't know if you put two and two together.
Keeping Up with the Joneses. I did not put that together ever until this very moment.
So yes, reference to my last name. You can, again, follow on Instagram at Keeping Up Comms on Instagram. Had my first post today, so now there's content to take a look at.
Content.
Yes. Funny side story. Growing up, my answering machine at my parents' house had Keeping Up with the Joneses on it. So
nice.
Also reminiscent of that.
Did you always know you're going to have a business with that name?
No, it actually just came to me earlier this year. I was like, I think that's perfect.
It is. I like it. You landed on it. You nailed it. And we're going to have links to everything, to all of those things in the show notes so people can click on them if they're not already following you. And Kelsey, I really appreciate everything you shared and for sitting down and doing this on short notice and for helping me and us get 100 to be what it was and what it is. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely have more conversations. For everybody else, new episodes on Tuesday for the next one Tuesday. And then we are going to be taking a small break, but you will be hearing more about that in a little bit. Other than that, you can go to conversationpeacepod.com to find out all the other stuff and check out the new merch thing that we have listed up there, because it is up there and it is real. Conversation Peace Pod on Instagram if you want to follow us for other stuff, YouTube, and anywhere that you get your podcasts to listen or watch. And other than that, this has been Conversation Peace, and I've been Patrick Armstrong. This has been 99 episodes. We will see you all for 100.